my first batch of questions to the Minister. You've said that the issue of the split of the departments has now been put to rest. I think I would almost speak on behalf of the ICT industry that is not so. Earlier this year we had a presentation or a two-day workshop with on transformation in the industry, in the sector, and entity after entity, business after business said to us that the split had been a disaster, and that it was a regressive step, and it should be undone. No one actually said, well done, we need this. And the legal quagmire that has been created for ICASA by the latest presidential proclamation has just added to the confusion that people have in dealing with the regulatory environment. But then I would like to know how, if we've had almost 9 months now of this new arrangement, how this split, which was decided totally by Cabinet, without any public input, has impacts the ICT policy review process. Because the split of broadcasting from the rest of ICT is totally against world trends. It is totally against the NDP. It is totally against the ICT policy review. How are you going to manage this going forward? If Minister just said, we no longer have to deal with the troublesome SABC. Yeah, I agree with that. SABC was a nightmare for anybody to deal with. It sucked too much oxygen out of the previous Department of Communications. If that was the issue, why wasn't it just transferred to public enterprises?
And none of the issues would have to be answered by the department, but start by those which are directed specifically to me. The split. I was not aware that there's still confusion, but what I'll assure you, there's no more confusion in the department, and maybe we should communicate properly about the separation. The purpose of the separation was not to get rid of the SABC. SAB is still an important institution. It was to create us to have a focused department, this new department, to drive this change through the use of the ICTs. Let me assure the honourable member again, it is not intended to undoing or the unbundling of the convergence. The convergence law is still there. We have not repealed those, and they're still being implemented. There should be no confusion. I'm not sure whether the council said they're confused. How are they going to monitor? Because the laws are still there, which imposes convergence. Yes, we need to increase the capacity of the regulator to do these things. So I don't think people should. What we should then do, which I agree with the member, maybe we should have a campaign to clarify this to the industry. But from where we stand, we know exactly what our tasks are. What we're expected to do is an enormous task. It's a hard task, but we're prepared to do. The government, in this reorganization of the state, it was not just a single person sitting at Mahlamandov. There were experts who were the advisors of this, not only in government, of this process. But the key thing was, how do we make use of the opportunities which are brought by the ICTs in a structured manner, in a focused manner, so that we can have adoption of the ICTs as a norm in South Africa, and can have the focused rollout of the infrastructure which is needed for that ICT to be prioritized. So it was not just about Department of Communication, there were other departments which were affected. As you know, the State Information Agency SITA, Integrated Agency, was in public and administration. And it was put there for a relevant reason before, because it was transversal. But because it drives IT in government, in all spheres of government, and that IT is run on these tubes, on these platforms, that's why it was brought here, so there's convergence, there's working together. So there were other departments, like the Department of Public Enterprises, which were housing companies or entities like Broadband in front. Those were brought here because the government, through the CSIR, which is our research institute, have clearly shown that there is a problem in the rollout of infrastructure. Whether you have, and we are prepared to work, and we are going to work with the private sector. So let's be clear on that. We have got no hostility to our private sector. They are our partners in delivery.
Broadcasting over the internet, programming over the internet, does that go to DAC? Does it come to us? Because it has to monitor that broadcasting, whether it is over a transmitter, Syntex transmitters, or whether it's through a fiber optic cable in the ground. You know, you cannot split it. Broadcasting is an integral part of ICT. So it was a huge mistake by Cabinet. It's a huge expense. I mean, the report we had by the department at the end of last year just showed the inertia that is actually injected into the whole process. So I'd like, please, your view on how the split is informed in light of the ICT policy review and the SAConnect.
Most of the investment now is mainly on the major urban centers, major metros in this critical infrastructure. That's why we're saying it must be rolled out. Roll out to rural towns, roll out to all towns in South Africa. And so that it becomes an enabler at the access level. Then people at the access level, they can use different technologies. Can use mobile, can use satellite, can use anything at the access level. There can be more players there. So it is quite critical for us that we are given this structured focus on the infrastructure, working with these entities at the CIP15, we are working with all levels of government. All provinces are participating. We are working with all metros. We are working with SAGA because we cannot bring all the municipality as a representative of municipalities. So there is no confusion, but I fully agree with you, Jaffa and the DG, they're here. We have to create a program because there's no confusion on what is the role. There's no regressing or undoing of the convergence. Jaffa was just writing a note. Jaffa has been part of the task team which are looking at the policy review. There's no such sentiment, and that policy review is got experts even from the private sector. And instead, they are looking at more services which should be brought in through this rollout of ICT services and IT services. So I thought I should just start with that. But fully agree with you that if there's still confusion, we'll have to undo that confusion.
Then on your pilot projects for the broadband rollout, the NHI pilot sites, now both in Sona and yourself, Mr. You have repeated this, was that Telkom was chosen as the lead agency for this. What were the criteria for that? Telkom is just one of many listed JSE companies that are able to provide this service. By what criteria has Telkom been chosen as the lead agency? Has this program even been, as a business plan, been put in place? Have tenders been called for? Or is this just going to be some internal departmental whim? Please, can you give us some details on that?
Let me try and clarify again. Telkom is not the only agency. It's the lead agency. Listen, I'm trying to answer you. It's a lead agency. We have identified it as a lead agency. Why? The honorable member there is correctly put it, from the ANC. Telkom is got the technical capacity to roll out this infrastructure. It's got the network, so that we build on that network. If you have heard, and really the crux of it is whether are we going to have open access networks. And I would really like to hear the stance of the community, because to us, that's the most critical thing which will enable the efficient deployment of ICT and the use of our infrastructure. The key thing is going to be avoiding duplication and having open access network. That's what will be the test, whether are we improving or going back. Whether those who have got infrastructure, they lock others out, even if they've got spare capacity, and have everyone digging the same trenches and rolling out this fiber or the mobile infrastructure. That's what is key. We are saying the cabinet just didn't give us a blanket check. They said we must come back then to cabinet, and that's what we are busy preparing now. So that in the actual implementation, we must have a clear definition on how this thing is going to be done, how do we derive the maximum value as government, value for the money, and how this lead agency is going to work with other entities. So that's what we are busy preparing now, so that we can take back to cabinet. So it's not about propping up one element. That element, we must have a clear definition of what's going to be value to us. If we can get these services free, but there's no company who will give us free these services. But to us, as a government, we must have it at a minimum cost or no cost or at cost. That's what we really prefer to have. Those are the negotiations which are going on now, so that we can take a report to cabinet and say, this is what is going on. But we cannot ignore that infrastructure. We cannot ignore that the telecom has invested in this infrastructure almost throughout the country. And then say now we'll have to create another parallel infrastructure to that. We say we must build on that as we finalize these policies of open access networks. Because once it becomes a policy, we can change it to legislation. So those are the things which are quite critical to me. And two, you must remember, Telkom is a listed company. We're not going to be reckless with appointments or the announcements. We must also allow it to account to its shareholders. We're not the only shareholders. But what we also know, in terms of the scale of technical capacity, I don't think there's any company who's got that scale in terms of technical capacity like Telkom. But we have other state-owned companies. We have Broadband in Franco, it's a telecoms company. We have got USASA, it's not a telecom company, but it's got a mandate to cover the areas where there are gaps and marginalized areas. It's going to be, the test of the pudding is how first, as state-owned companies, they're going to collaborate so that we can have greater impact. Because it's not about just doing, it must have impact in terms of outcome of this service.